Are we on?
Yes.
Okay, good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are at the moment, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I wanted to mention that we've got a presentation coming up tomorrow with Nina again. Is that right, Evan?
Yes. So I'll just get that up for everyone.
Yeah.
Yes, so that's tomorrow, middle of the day, if you're in Australia on the East Coast.
And if you're somewhere else, it'll be somewhere different to the time
I
we're
think
just
Queensland
given.
would be 11 a.m. WA, is that 10 or 9? I don't know.
And the rest of the world, we have no idea, but
Yeah.
you'll get to at some stage or other. We're replaying an earlier show we did on Carryong about 3 years before, and it's amazing how at that stage we did think that the glyphs were safe, didn't we, Evan?
Safe-ish.
Safe-ish. Well, they've become very unsafe. There's been more talk since we last
safe
spoke.
As in not unsafe to go to, as safe as in their existence
is now under threat. It's been said more than once that they want the whole place destroyed and to get rid of that rubbish graffiti. But in the meantime, we're going to talk today about a couple of articles. One we've just put up and another one I'm writing at the moment. And what we're doing now is I just wanted to go back to mainstream, because a lot of people look to mainstream archaeology and say, well, hang on for a sec. They said the Carryong glyphs is fake. Maybe it should be destroyed. Mind you, they said the Standing Stone site is fake and maybe it has been destroyed. When I think about it, they're doing a lot of destroying at the moment. But anyway, what I wanted to do was to look at some of the most recent archaeological articles that have come out. And we've got I don't know what you call it, an article, an overview of 3.
Yeah.
I know, it might be 3 different.
3 with a few extra sprinklings in there.
Okay, We've got 3 there and a rock. Right, and the first one I'm holding up now, this one here, which you probably, you can read that way. What if the out of Africa theory is wrong? The Spectator Australia, and it's written by a lady by the name of Alexandra Marshall. And it started off quite interestingly, and I'll take you through it because we've written about each of them. It starts with a valid point. What if it is wrong? But then what they start by saying is that basically that if you try and attack mainstream, she calls the scientific establishment an unhelpful gatekeeper and makes its current pretense of being the sole source of truth even more laughable. And she goes on to say that people who say trust science, they say trust is based on a faith. It's not actually factual. If you trust someone, you believe them because you want to. And she goes on to make the point at the start of the second page. And for some time, there has been a suspicion that the out of Africa theory may be wrong. It has been a cascade of little things, a fossil here, a clash of migratory patterns here, a gradual accumulation of facts to chip away from the grand theory. And then she says, recently, one of those chips has become a crack. And what she talks about, she attacks mainstream and talks about an 8.7 million year-old site in central Anatolia, which I think is in Turkey. And found a new form of ape. And goes on to say further on that there have been a massive amount of finds in Europe, and they've found the ancestors of rhinos, giraffes, and other animals commonly associated with Africa, and they were in Europe 8 million years ago. And goes on to say, well, this ape we found is 8.7 million years. And then goes on to say, well, what if the first apes made their way into Africa around 7 or 6 million years? And then, after attacking mainstream vigorously and saying that just proves they're wrong.
Well, so far I'm on board with this.
False, yeah. And then goes on to say, well, that means that the first hominids came out of Europe. And the reason they came out of Europe is because everybody knows that from monkeys, you get hominins. And since the monkeys were in Europe first, then the hominins were. And that's interesting because she starts by attacking mainstream to hanging on to a theory that's falling apart, then lays all her weight on a theory that's based around a missing link, which when I was in school, which is a long time ago in the 1970s and 60s, I was told in science there is a missing link that'll soon be found.
Mm.
And that was about 55 years ago.
Mm.
Well, I've been waiting 55 years, and guess what? They haven't found one. But apparently that doesn't matter, because it means that even though for the last 55 years they've found 16 different types of hominins and other types of apes and all that sort of stuff, they have not found that missing link. But they will one day for sure, obviously. But what she then goes on to say, well, you know what this means, don't you? And she brings it back to politics and talks about the original people, where it said, giving all this, how enraged do you think your average yes activist would be upon, that's the referendum we had recently, upon discovering that we are all ancient Europeans? That's what she says, after we've had to endure, and this is what I love, their offensive and hateful demands that we should all go back to England. Now, I've got to tell you something. I've heard a lot of white fellas tell people who came from Vietnam, from Asia, from Muslim countries, from Sudan, to go back there. I've heard lots of white fellas say that.
Yeah.
But in the whole of my 70 years of being on this planet, you've been here for a while, Evan, never heard a black fella tell a white fella, you've got to all go back to England from where you came?
No, I've never heard that.
It's a hateful demand, Evan. You should have remembered it's offensive and hateful.
Right.
So she uses this to attack the politics of the people who are hanging on to a theory. And what she says about that was that theory, it says this, it plays into the preferred mythology of Africa's Eden-esque beginning, destroyed by the greed of European nations. Well, it was destroyed by the greed of European nations. That's what colonialism did.
That is pretty much the summary of it.
That's a good discovery. But what she's saying is, well, that means now because they came from Europe, well, then Europeans had the right to invade Africa and trash it, because they were Europeans and they were only doing what sapiens do, white ones that come from there. So that's the first one.
Right.
It does raise a valid point that the oldest monkeys found on the planet are not African. That's a valid point, because that's been a theory and a linchpin of all their theories. So it does break that one down. But that's not enough when you turn it back into politics and fall on another theory that's even more tenuous than the one she's attacking and use that as a base for their fact. It's like robbing Peter to pay Paul, isn't it?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay. Now, the next one, the next article Evan's just putting up, ancient DNA analysis sheds light on the early peopling of South America. That's different. That has 4 PhDs, Evan.
Ooh.
And lots of universities involved in this one. So we can't. The other woman was writing a story about other work, and then she gave her take on that. This is the original story about this. And what they found there was they were analysing DNA, and there's pictures of them in Ethiopia. Oh, no, not in Ethiopia. No, in South America.
Mm-hmm.
No, there aren't pictures on this one. It's on the next one. I got that wrong. My apologies. The pictures are coming up. Mind you, Evan put lots of pictures in this one. I don't know where he found them all, but he did. And what they found was they did some very extensive DNA sampling and found some unexpected and surprising results. Lo and behold, and what were these unexpected and surprising results? They found, number one, researchers also found strong Australasian, that's Australian, Papua New Guinea, genetic signals in an ancient genome from Panama. And then they go on to say there is an entire Pacific Ocean between Australasia and the Americas, and we still don't know how they got there. But they make it very clear they found something there. Then they go further. They say, hang on for a sec. What we also would, further adding to the existing complexity, they detected a huge Denisovan content, more so than Neanderthal, in ancient Uruguay and Panama individuals.
The green is the Denisovan.
Right.
So there's your Denisovan.
Yeah, very big there.
Look how much there's in Panama.
Where's Panama up there?
Yeah, that's Panama.
Wow. That's full on.
There's a fair bit here too.
Yeah.
But everywhere's got it. Down here, more than half.
Now, here's the trick here, ladies and gentlemen. It goes on to say the admixture must have occurred a long time before, perhaps 40,000 years ago. And you know what I found interesting about that? When they were dealing with the huge Denisovan linkage or percentages found in the genetics of original people, which goes from 2 to 5%. And if you're above 2%, you must be original, unless you come from Panama a long, long time ago, right? That was the rule and still is the rule. I'm 4.7%. Now, what's interesting is they said 40,000 years ago, that is exactly what they said about the Denisovan contact in original people. They said this happened 40,000 years ago. So I see a couple of commonalities there that they didn't pick up on. What they also found interesting was they said, what's weird is we've got all these original DNA in South America, but no evidence of that in North America.
Whoops.
Incorrect. Incorrect. I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen. And we've given you many examples of Sylvia Gonzalez, Clive Gamble, Dr. Walter Neves, their work where they were finding lots. And of course, Albert Goodyear, right? They were finding dates. They found Penon woman. That's her now. Evans just put her up. Penon woman.
That's Louisa.
Oh, Louisa, is it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
From
She's
Brazil.
original. Okay, she's from South America, isn't she?
Mm-hmm.
Right. She's from South America. And they found, Walter Neves found 55 skulls that he identified as being, had the morphology and the skull structure of the original people. Penon woman, which is found in Baja, California, by Sylvia Gonzalez, is 25,000 years old, which means it's pre-Clovis.
Mm-hmm.
And she said it's original. And then you've got Albert Goodyear that was working at Topper, wasn't he?
Yes.
Savannah River. And what happened there? After everyone finished, because they got Clovis dates of 12 and 13,000 years, they're all happy with that. Everyone left, but Goodyear stayed. And he dug down another 4 meters. And down 4 meters past where they dug for 13,000 years, he found a hearth and stone tools. And the date there, because there was lots of charcoal there, was 38,000 years. Well, the story is that Clovis Asian or French people came around 12 to 13,000 years ago, and there we've got 38. That's 3 times that date. They didn't know about that, did they? No, and they didn't know about the fact when they said, this is odd. Further adding to complexity, they found huge Denisovan readings. Well, it's not odd. Go to Australia and go to the work of a lot of other geneticists, and I'll tell you straight away, if it's above 2%, it's original. Now, what was good about this article is they did acknowledge that was Australian DNA, but they couldn't work out how or why, and they didn't add to it. They just said it's in South America, it's in North America and South America, and they didn't extrapolate and go from South America to Australia where the DNA content of Denisovans is so high. So we've got a commonality in those two articles. Both of them are saying basically a lot of the stuff we've got's wrong.
Here we go. Researchers also found strong Australian Papua New Guinea genetic signals in an ancient genome from Panama.
I'd read that before.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one there.
Yeah.
Now, here's where it gets interesting, and I'm running out of time here. Here's the third article we worked on, and this came out of Nexus, the last or second last edition. I think it's the October-November edition. The December one's just come out. And the study suggests that early humans nearly became extinct 90,000 years ago. And they're talking about Heidelbergensis. And around 900,000 years to 100,000 years, their numbers went down to, they think, around 1,280. How they got a number of 1,280, I have no idea, and I don't want to go down that path. What I find interesting is, what they talk about is they talk about this being as being related to the Homo sapiens. They were of the same group. They said that they call this early humans became extinct. Now, here's the problem. And there's a picture, I think, of the Heidelbergensis with the huge eyebrows, the big nose. Doesn't look much like us, but here is what I find interesting. They tell us, and by the way, I can assure you this is correct because I'm working on another article right now. And in that particular, this one here, another group here, and I'll read what they said in their paper there. And this is what they said. Okay, For context, the fossil record indicates our species evolved in Africa only 300,000 years ago. But here is the story that says here's one of our relations walking around on the planet 900,000 years ago. Go figure. What is going on here, Evan? How can you have someone who's related to us existing 600,000 years before we come into being? How do you do that? I couldn't work that out. I had no idea. They had the DNA of over 3,000 people from different parts of the world to try and work out what happened. And they said that extreme cooling event might have made it worse. They also said the lack of fossil records makes it really difficult to work out what happened. Now, what they're basically saying is our ancestors of us were around 600,000 years ago before we were. Now, don't think that's weird, because in this particular article here, where they say that we were around for 300,000 years ago, they then talk about the fact that we have mitochondrial DNA that comes from Neanderthal, and Neanderthals and modern humans have evolved some significant differences during their roughly 500,000 years apart. I've got a problem for you, Evan. If they've been apart for 500,000 years ago, and Homo sapiens came into existence 300,000 years ago, are they talking about a time 200,000 years from now in the future?
Well, maybe.
They have to be. Because in this article, and I'm writing about this one next, what they're basically saying is they found an unknown lineage found buried in the Neanderthal genome, and it happened, and this is the best part, it happened around 270,000 years ago, when they said a group of sapiens left Africa. By the way, they'd only come into existence when? 300,000 years ago. 30,000 years after they first came into existence, they left Africa and made their way through to Asia. And the best part of this story is, yes, then they bred with these people, right? And according to one part of it, and I'll read what it says here, they died out. Can you see the word died out there?
Yes, yes.
And go down to the next page. And then they've got here, Neanderthal genes were introduced by people migrating back to Africa from Eurasia. So they died out, all of them completely, and then some of them went back to Africa. Right. There's a mathematical problem here, isn't there?
There is.
There's a couple. Number one, you can't die out in one paragraph completely, can you?
No.
Then 4 paragraphs apart, written by the same people, they say some of these people migrated back to Africa from Eurasia. Were they zombies?
Maybe.
They have to be.
At this point, why not?
They have to be zombies because they're dead. The paper said they died out, but then some of them came back. Now, what they said was basically that within 30,000 years of them coming to being, they left Africa, walked all the way through Europe, or all the way through Eurasia, and ended up in the bottom part of Asia. And there they intermixed with them 270,000 years ago. And then after they intermixed, they either, or did both, they died out completely and then came back.
Oh, that was nice of them.
Was this a Lazarus thing?
But why? Yeah. Zombie Lazarus.
So what we're doing at the moment, ladies and gentlemen, is we're doing scientific papers that have been published by people with PhDs that really must know what they're talking about. I don't know so much about the first woman. She's just repeating information and giving her take on it, which is very political. But the other 3 weren't, were they? They were just giving science. And what I noticed about the science in all 3 of them is you can't have a story where we come into existence 300,000 years ago, but one of our relatives, our ancestors, one of the people we came from, is walking around 600,000 years ago, and another one that we bred with was walking around 500,000 years ago, but we didn't come into existence at 200,000 to 600,000 before those other beings, which are related to us. And for those people who don't understand what this is about, what they will tell you completely is this: the Denisovans, Neanderthals, and Homo sapiens came from the same common ancestor.
Right.
That's a given, isn't it?
Yes.
Well, here's the problem. What? The common ancestor decided, I'm going to make Heidelberg Genesis 1 million years ago, right?
Why not?
And then the same common ancestor around 50, 60, 600,000 years ago said, I think I'll now give birth to Neanderthal. But bugger the sapiens. I'm not ready to give them up yet.
They'll be later.
They'll be later. And then another 300,000 years or 200,000 years past that, they decide, I am the common ancestor of the other beings around 1 million years ago and 500,000 years ago. I feel like creating a new species, and I'll call them sapiens. And Mummy and Daddy Monkey made Sapiens, didn't they? So, ladies and gentlemen, there's a takedown at the moment of the most recent archaeology coming out around the world, explaining to us nothing except they can't do maths.
Well, it reminds me of what from The Simpsons,
Right?
when the rapture happened. Flanders was yelling into the skies, going, "Flanders to God, Flanders to God. I've done everything you've told me to do in the Bible, even the bits that contradict the other bits." So we have papers contradicting themselves.
So we just
and
ignore
other
them,
papers.
and we just ignore them straight out.
Yep.
The problem is, if you read those 3 papers I've just given to you, which have all come out in the last couple of months and have been lauded as being brilliant, the one thing you'll understand is that I've got dates of 1 million years, 500,000 years, and 300,000 years. And then if it is the 300,000 years, within 20 or 30,000 years, they decide, I don't like this place, I'm going to Asia.
Oh, wow.
And when I go to Asia, I'm going to die, completely die out, and then come back. That's the common statement when it comes to what is going on around the world. You can't have papers where they will say in the same damn paper, and I've read it to you, ladies and gentlemen, oh, no, we were around 300,000 years ago, and then we found our ancestors, our relations, they were around 500,000 years ago, and in Nexus they tell us another one of our relations, it's an early human, was around 900,000 years ago. No, but that was 1 million because it went on for 100,000 years.
Yeah.
No, it went on for 117,000 years. It was 1,280
It was a cooling
people.
event, wasn't it?
A cooling event.
Cooling event.
But hang on, I've got a problem. We got a problem here. Here's the problem, ladies and gentlemen. If that happened to Heidelbergensis, which had a bigger skull than ours, didn't he? Right? How come when there was a massive cooling event in Europe, and we've read the paper on this, 760,000 years ago, both the Neanderthals and Denisovans were walking around at the time, coped with that cooling event and thrived.
Right.
So why is it that 2 of our ancestors, when it got cold, they said, yeah, I can handle this. But another one of our ancestors was around with a bigger brain than ours, right? He was around 130,000 years before it got cold. Then said, oh, man, I'm just going to stand here and die. I can't handle it.
Yeah.
It's no good for me. I can't deal with it anymore. I'm just going to die. Because I'm too dumb to think about, I might have to get new resources or move on. I'm just going to stay here. And when all the animals I hunt aren't here anymore,
I'll just
wither away and die. But roughly 100,000 years later, Neanderthal and Denisovans, which also have larger brains than ours, they coped, didn't they?
Yep.
All right. Now, that's a fact.
Yep.
That part is a fact. But I love the fact it dipped to as low as 1,280 for around 117,000 years, not 120, 117 is around. How do you get those numbers? And here's the point. This is the same mob that got these numbers who are also working on the same assumption as all the other people out of Africa 300,000 years ago. And it was 250. And of course, one thing I like on this particular one here, and this one I'm going to do next, it starts with Homo sapiens migrated into Eurasia more than 70,000 years ago. I can tell you now, 10 years ago, it wasn't 70, was it? It was 50.
Yeah.
And that's why Australia was out 40,000 years, wasn't it?
Yep.
And now it's 70,000 years because we've got dates here of 65, haven't we? That's why it went up. But they don't, when they make those statements like 70,000 years ago, they don't then say, oh, shit, I want to apologize. We've been telling you guys for quite some time, right, that it's 50,000 years, but we were wrong. It's a bit like in Australia when I was at school, I was told the Aboriginal people for 20,000 years. Then there were T-shirts saying 40,000 years. Then they said 50,000 years. Now they're talking about 60,000 years. And Jim Bell was talking about 120,000 years, isn't he? So what I notice about this is archaeology is brilliant with one thing: screwing up maths. They don't know what numbers mean. They just chuck them out there and they don't realize, oh, did I write 3 different numbers here? Oh, it doesn't matter, does it? They won't notice. They're not going to read the whole article. And they're right about that. Most people don't read scientific articles, so they're safe like that. But ladies and gentlemen, it's a fairly long article. I do apologise for that. It's about 4,500 words, which is unusual for me.
About 50 references, 49.
49 references, because, if we want to do this properly, we've got to quote from these people, haven't we? We've got to prosecute their story properly and tell you exactly how they work this out. and how clever they are with mathematics. Just think about it. Just imagine these archaeologists doing maths tests. And if they got anything marked wrong, they'd be indignant, wouldn't they? How dare you say that 1 and 1 are 16? They are. I've done it.
Yep.
I've been doing this work for a while, man. I've been doing numbers, and my numbers are right. And they are. They're right off the planet. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I've got to actually go in about 5 minutes, so I'm going to finish up now, which is a blessing for Evan because he thought I'd go longer. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you'd like to have a look at basically an overview of the best science in the world, that tells you right now we've been here for 250,000 years, 300,000 years, 500,000 years, 1 million years, because our ancestors were all them. And then, by the way, Heidelberg-Jensen was around 1.5 million years ago, wasn't he? So don't just take that one when his numbers dropped. He was there before then. They've got other dates of 1.5 million years, which is 5 times the date when the current date is for when Homo sapiens came into existence. What we read from that is one thing. It's a lie. It's a lie.
Yeah, well, he's putting fingers in the leaks and the dam and doing a lot of this at the moment.
Yeah, the problem is when you've only got 10 fingers, mate.
Yeah.
And there's 30 leaks.
Yep.
I'll give this woman one thing, right? The one at the start who made a political thing about the fact this poor whites have been oppressed by the blackfellas, telling us to go back to England. The one thing I will give her credit for is she did get one thing right, that the out of Africa theory is broken.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely broken. That part's easy. Anyone can say it.
Yeah.
But then what you've got to do is if you're going to start standing outside mainstream, you can't use mainstream and say they're crap here, but over here I love what they're saying, I'll use that. You go one way or the other. You don't say they're buggering up on something civil like that, then say, oh, but the other part about us coming from monkeys, that must be true. But they're European monkeys, aren't they? Yeah. Anyway, all monkeys don't have sutures. We do.
All right. Okay. Well, we will hope to see some of you for the replay tomorrow.
Yeah.
And then there'll be one the following weekend and the following weekend. So see you all very soon.
Yep.
And have a look at the article. Spent most of yesterday on it.
Yep. Put the pictures in and reference the whole thing.
Okay. See you all soon.
We'll
Bye.
Okay, I'll be